love again.
Here we go. That's Inglewood Humperdinck and Release Me. Thought I'd better play all that. One of my mother's favourites. She's probably listening up there somewhere. Time on the Breakfast Show, 27 minutes. That's after the hour of 8 o'clock here on this morning's Breakfast Show. It is a Thursday, and he's with me here on Zoom. Dr. Computer, Alex Newman. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Jerry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay under the circumstances, I suppose.
That's what I heard. Yasmin let me know. So I'm rooting for you to get better soon, and hopefully we can visit again.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too bad. I mean, it's mild, but of course everybody's coming down with this thing right now. Funny enough, my sister-in-law sent me a little note. They said a little sort of quip, I guess. It said that it's probably easier now if they put everybody that is negative on lockdown and let the rest of us out.
Oh well, of course we should get a doctor in to talk about this at some point, but. Immunity is a lot more complicated than most people think. I mean, there are at least 3 levels to it. There's memory immunity. There's so many things that
political immunity. Don't forget political immunity. I'm surprised. Was it the Vice President Carrizo got it? So they're not immune to everything.
Well, let me put it this way: political immunity is something that we usually don't deal with when dealing with human medicine. But yeah, for several reasons. But in any case, speaking of exposure, which is basically what all of us are trying to avoid, the topic that we were going to talk about today is basically exposure tracking, contact tracing apps, and how far we've come or not in that regard, and QR codes and all of that. I think you may have some questions. I know that Yasmin has a few, and one of them was, how come I've had 3 shots already, but my QR code only registers 1? So there's 2 records of that. There's a manual record that she has probably with her vaccination card and whatever. And there's a digital record that's being kept by the Authority for Government Innovation. And what we can do in that regard is she can reach out to them through their Twitter account. She can reach out through their email. They have a form on the website, and she can also reach out on their other social media contacts and have them correct that. I know for a fact, because I've helped a few friends correct some things in their documentation, because unfortunately, up until very recently, a lot of these systems in the government were in very independent silos, independent from each other. So you'd have one database in Registro Público, one database in Registro Civil, one database in Tribunal Electoral, and so on. And it's only in recent years that they started to become associated with a lot of problems in between. For example, people who have married and changed their names, people who have changed their gender expression and changed their names. There's a whole bunch of people out there that have moved from one jurisdiction to another, but haven't made all of these changes known in all of the different instances in the government. So there is room for some error to creep in. And the great thing about the Authority for Innovation is that they are, even though they are swamped with work, they are available to fix these things, usually within hours, sometimes within the same week that you file a complaint or provide them with the information that needs correction. So I would have my hopes, pinned on doing that, reaching out to the Authority for Innovation, so that in case that Yasmin needs to travel, for example, or she needs to go somewhere where they are asking for a full vaccination card, she can actually provide not only the physical one that she has in her hand, but also if they check the QR code or her cellular number or whatever, they can tell that she has been, in fact, fully vaccinated.
Okay, well, that brings us nicely to my point is because I have my QR code. I have my QR code with the green little screen around it or whatever, and you say, well, if they check your QR code, nobody checks your QR code. They look at it, but that's not checking a QR code. I could put anybody's QR code up there. I haven't seen anybody with a machine that can read the QR code. I, out of interest this morning, got my QR code up on my screen and said, well, let's see what happens when I do it with my phone. Well, all it does is takes me to the sign in screen for that particular entity. So, I assume that people that need to read the QR code have a special system whereby they can actually see the information on the QR code. Otherwise, what is the point of it? I mean, I could just put anybody's QR code up there with a green brick around it, and they just look at it and say, "Okay, that's not
Yeah,
that's
you
not
could
security."
you could put in the menu for Applebee there, for example, in some cases,
Yeah.
and people would not notice. So let's go back to what exactly a QR code is. And no, it's not an alien conspiracy by the lizard people. It's
Oh,
there's a thin line between, truth and conspiracy theories, but with barcodes, there's a thin line, then a thick line, then two thin lines, then another thick line, and so on. Uh, but coming back to reality, QR codes are basically two-dimensional barcodes, such as the ones that you find on the back of your cellular, the ones that you find
mhm.
on some government checks. There's car parts. They're used in, I mean, you've been in the shipping industry. I'm sure that the container ships also have, before they had radio frequency ID tags, they also had barcodes to be able to tell them apart and
Yeah,
so
but
on.
you're talking, but the thing is, you're talking about two different things. Barcodes are not the same as QR codes.
Oh, QR codes are
Well,
barcodes.
okay. They're a different structure. They can maintain, they
Yeah,
can hold more information, which is the whole point. Now, we're not talking
exactly.
about reading barcodes. We're talking about reading the QR codes. Now,
Exactly.
I can make up a QR code that'll take you to my website, which is what most of them are used for. When you go to the restaurant, which I think is a great idea, but they have the menus with the QR code available, it takes you to the website where they have their menu. Renee has just said, by the way, they do scan your QR code at Tokumen. Well, I would hope so, because that's a government, organization, and we're letting people in and out based on their QR codes as well. What I'm getting at here is that the lady who lets you in to the cinema or lets you in, they do not have that ability to get the information off your QR code. So what is the point?
I agree with you in that regard. Now, you, for example, made an excellent point there. You can make in seconds a URL based QR code, which means
Mhm,
it takes you to a website. And that's what most restaurants do.
mhm.
A lot of people have something like that on their business card. And for example, if you walk by Parque Omar, they have QR codes on the trees that let you look up information on, what kind of tree it is and why
Mhm.
it's there and how it got there and so on. Something that I actually proposed many, many years ago be done with the rest of the city, but it's nice to see it implemented at some point. Um, in fact, I was in favor of, for example, putting like barcodes on health inspectors and people like that, so you could, look it up and see if they exactly are who they say they are and whatever. But the thing is, when you look up one of these QR codes, such as the one that you printed out for your vaccination status, it took you to a web page which then asked you for a login.
Mhm.
And if you log in as yourself, you can see your own barcode. You
Right.
can't, however, see other people's barcodes.
No.
You can't see what their information is and so on. What one would expect is that places such as the movie theater, where they have to check the validity of the status, but don't have to have any other information. I mean, the theater doesn't need to know who you are, what your age is, where you live, or any of the other information that's stored in the website where the QR code takes you to. So if they have their own login, not your cellular and your password, but like movie theater so-and-so and a specific password, they could have access to a web page that says, yes, this is a valid QR code, or no, this is not a valid QR code. The thing is, you hit another important point. You could print out somebody else's QR code, and if it doesn't have any sort of identifying information, which you wouldn't want to have for privacy reasons, then you can pretty much use anybody else's. One way to counteract this would probably be to have something, else to authenticate with, like cedula or something like that. But that would start to delve into more complex territory. It can be done. It's just kind of a two-step process.
Why, Alex, why can't it, in a way, coded within the information on the QR code? Look, it doesn't matter who reads it, okay? Because I can show you my vaccination card anyway, okay? On my cell phone, I have my QR code. I have my copy of a picture of my card with all my vaccinations on it. Look, all you need to do is to scan it, and it comes up and says, authorized by the Ministry of Health, Reorder or whatever, has had vaccination so-and-so this date, vaccination so-and-so that date, vaccination so-and-so that date. Just come up on a screen to prove your identity with a picture.
Which I don't have a problem with, and they would have a way to do that.
We carry an ID card anyway, so what's the what's the difference?
I know.
But what I'm saying, we're talking about security, we're talking about traceability, which, to be honest, I think has gone out the window with the number of cases we're getting now. Traceability is almost impossible. Yeah. So that has basically gone out the window. But what I'm saying is that the whole idea behind it is good, okay? Showing that you are vaccinated. If I want to go into a restaurant, now you say, well, we're only taking people that are fully vaccinated. Well, if they're going to look at that QR code, it's not going to tell them anything, and I'm going to be sitting in the restaurant anyway.
Yeah, the other thing is, you, for example, mentioned showing a vaccination card. The vaccination card doesn't have your picture or anything that could tie it to you, so you could basically use mine and I could use yours.
Well, it does have my name, and it does have my cedular number, etc.
But then they would have to ask for the QR code plus the cellular for some form of authentication.
When you make up a QR code, it's based on information. Certain information could be taken from your details. Okay, so when they give you that QR code, locked into that QR code is your picture and your inoculation information, your picture, your cedular number, and your locked in information. So that it doesn't need to go anywhere else. It'll just show you that information.
That is correct. That being said, the QR code has a lot less information that you think. It just has a unique identifier, which ties you to the website, which has your picture and your
then explain to me, Alex, the difference in the QR code from the Ministry of Health and the QR code from the restaurant. That you can see just by looking at the QR code from the Ministry of Health, there's a lot more information on it.
Yeah, there's basically not much more information. It is denser. It is. And it does have some more information than the one in the restaurant. But the one in the restaurant is made less dense and shorter because it makes it easier for even low-end phones to capture quite easily. But most of the information is not in the QR code. The QR code is just a reference to the information that's on the government website.
Okay. So then tell me how it works at Tucumán Airport when they scan everybody's QR code.
They also look at the face from the website that they are connected to. That is why when you scan,
so then they must have access to that information through the website. It must bypass the sign-in information then.
They do, because they already signed in with their Tucumán passport, which allows them to look at your passport and my vaccine information and everybody else's. Because otherwise, if you log in as me, I can't see your QR code. If you log in as yourself, you can't see my QR code.
When somebody comes from the United Kingdom and they have their vaccination QR code, how does Tucumán get the information off it?
Off some other website somewhere in the EU.
Okay, so it has access to that person's information. the same way as when I come in, they scan my QR code and it comes up and gives them my information. So
Exactly.
that information is there, but it's
Yes.
only exclusive to the government organization. So how
Yes.
does it work for the restaurant or the theater or wherever?
They have to have special IDs to log in to the system that you got to the login prompt that allows them to check other people's ID, not as a
Okay.
person, but as an entity. But if
Okay.
they
So
haven't done that,
why don't they have it?
I don't think they've had the will to do it because if I understand how it works correctly, they just have to talk to the government and say, hey, I'm going to start asking people for their vaccination status because I want to have, my business at full capacity. So please give me a login and password. And they should have some sort of a phone in their hand or any other terminal or a tablet, and then scan it and see that it matches who you say you are.
Exactly. And this is my whole point, but they don't have that information.
I think that's called security theater.
Well, you need it to get into the theater. I mean, see, but do you see what I'm getting at? The whole idea in principle is great, but it is not
The
working.
implementation is ridiculous, unfortunately. I think you've probably seen a meme video, short video of somebody at some sort of a football match or something like that, who instead of actually patting people down, he's just waving his arms in front of them and then letting them pass into the stadium. It's kind of like that.
I mean, it's because I say I think the idea is extremely good, and we're getting all these things like in France, they're up in arms because the government says you're going to have a vaccination passport. And I mean, by the way, even now, I never realized. So a friend of mine showed me one the other day that you can go to at certain times to the vaccination centers that they have in various places, and you can get a carnet. It's like a cedula, and it has your QR code on it with your information. Which to me is a little bit more sensible because it actually says my name and whatever on there, and it's the Ministry of Health or whatever, and there's a QR code, so that at least there's some kind of ID with that. But by me just putting it up on my telephone and saying, well, here's my QR code, and it's got no other relevant information.
There's really not much difference between one and the other. I mean, functionally, they are exactly the same. The one that looks like a credit card size thing that you can put in your pocket or your wallet is just a convenience, but it's not any more official one than the other. I mean, you could slap any logo on it. You could put the NASA logo on it if you want, but it's the information that's actually what's important.
Okay, another question about QR codes. Now, it says can a hacker hack your QR code to get your information? Well, basically, from what I was saying earlier, if we're going to looking at the QR code for my vaccination system, if you were to scan my QR code, it would just take you to the login to the ministry's vaccination page. So there is no information on there. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Q code will point you in the direction of information as opposed to give you the information. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can't hack a QR code the way you can't hack, for example, a drawing of my name in Japanese on a piece of parchment. It's kind of the same thing. It's a representation in something other than Roman numerals and letters. That points you to something, in this case, my name. It's just a representation. It's like a painting or, there's nothing to hack. It's just a painting. It's just an image that points you into something. So there's nothing really to hack. There's no hacking of QR codes. QR codes are not going to hack you or do anything. They're just representations, just like letters and numbers, but in a way that occupies a lot less space. I mean, if you had to type in the information that's in a barcode, it would probably take, say, half a page. But this way, you can put it on a postage stamp size thing, and it's there.
Okay.
It's just represented more efficiently. And that's why barcodes were invented. They're easier to read by a computer, they're easier to print by a computer, and they're easier to pack more information more densely in than letters and numbers.
Here's something that I've sort of tried and it doesn't work because it is when you buy a tin of beans or you buy something from the supermarket or whatever, it has a barcode.
Yeah.
And what I thought is, wouldn't it be great if I could take that product home, scan it with my phone, and put it in my cupboard? And that goes into my inventory of what I have in my cupboard. And then when I take it out and I scan it, it erases it, and then I'm -1 or whatever. But you can't use them for that because it only holds information which is relevant to somebody else, really.
Not really. What you're mentioning is already available in some late model Samsung and LG, I believe, refrigerators. They can even use the internal cameras in the refrigerator to scan your fridge and say, hey, you might want to get some eggs while you're out because you're almost out. And I actually interviewed the nice folks at Tetra Pak a couple of weeks ago about how their products are now embedded with QR codes that tell you the traceability of that product from the farm to the table, so that you can tell where it was, collected, farmed, or harvested, or whatever, what the information is, nutritional information, recipes, things. I mean, pretty much everything. So beyond the, best used by date, now you have a whole bunch of information that's pointed to by this QR code that you can look up at any time. So the next time you have a carton of milk or anything like that, that's Tetra Pak, look for the code. A lot of the products have the code, not all of them, but a lot of the products are, getting this code. So you can have full traceability of the product plus additional information that you might not know about that product, including, if it's something edible, maybe recipes, things like that. So have a lot of fun. Oh, for example, I have right now this, I don't know if you've seen them around town. This is the Maxell Hypershock wireless headset for gaming and communication. And you can see that in the back, there's a QR code that probably takes you to more information about the product itself. By the way, I'm going to be doing a review on my website and my YouTube channel for, anybody who's in the market for a good wireless and wired headset that also provides a lot of gaming features, such as LED and vibration for, when you get shot at the game and things like that. So that's going to be interesting.
Hey, just out of interest, I just scanned an item. It just happens to be some Nivea hydration cream, which I have here, and I scanned the barcode. And it comes up with format to EAN-13 type product time 1/2022. That's the time. I obviously just scanned it, metadate DE. But let's see if I do product search. Oh, it comes up with a security. No, it doesn't give me the information that I want. If I was to, or if they had a special like consumer code, where if I scan that, it said, Nivea Express Hydration Cream, and that could go into my inventory of what products I have in my house or whatever. So that when I do go and buy stuff from the supermarket, when I bring it home, I scan it, I put it in a cupboard, and it goes onto my inventory of what I have. Firstly, it makes it a lot easier for me to find. If they had expiry dates on it as well, and you got a warning when the expiry date was about to come, it would save my wife and I going to the cupboard and finding things that we've got there and they expired in 2013. This to me seems such a good idea, such a good product to control. Because is there anything out there that allows you to maintain an inventory of what you've got in your kitchen cupboards that
I'm sure there's an app for that, and I'll tell you what.
If not, Albert, Alex, we're going to make one, and we're going to sell it for billions.
Okay. Billions of what? I don't know, but I do remember back in the Apple II and Commodore 64 days and Atari XE and ST days, there were applications that you could use barcode readers, the one that would plug into the joystick port or the keyboard port, that you could use to inventory your vinyl albums or your cassette tapes or your VHS tapes and so on, so that you could keep an inventory of your tapes and records and things like that. And by the way, you said EAN, that stands for European Article Number. So that's the code that defines what kind of an article it is in the European Union. So that's one of the standards. So I just scanned this this QR code here, and it takes me to the Maxell Latin America website where there's more information about it. So yeah, a lot more products would benefit from having QR codes on them, because you have to take into account barcodes were there for retailers and for distributors and for shippers and so on, because having a barcode reader meant having something that was on the end of a cord that was plugged into a computer that nobody necessarily had.
But they're there. But they're there, Alex, because they're there to control their inventory. What is the difference between them controlling their inventory and my controlling mine?
Because now we have a computer in our pocket, and now is the time where these apps would really shine, and hopefully they will. So, I think that we're going to have to look for one of those applications, and if it doesn't exist, we're going to have to go and make them.
Absolutely. I just think it'd be a great idea. Say, because I can go and come up and it would say that the following items will expire within the next 2 weeks. Not only
that, you could ask it for, let's say, a Mexican recipe for, with what I have, and it would tell you, well, I would suggest the guacamole because that avocado you just bought is starting to turn black. So
Renee says my brother has a smart refrigerator. These things are pretty amazing. I tell you what, my grandmother used to think the slab of marble that we used to have in the pantry was great because that kept things cool.
Well, I for one, am a little afraid of smart refrigerators and smart washing machines, because I'm afraid of a time where I'll go to my smart refrigerator and say, hey, what can I make, regarding Mexican food with what I have in the fridge? And the fridge is going to tell me, well, I could recommend some Mexican food, but I had a talk with your washing machine, and I think you might benefit from a salad. Because you can now tell a lot of smart washing machines, hey, I stained this with chocolate and it will do a special cycle for that. So the moment the fridge finds out what happened to your drawers, I think it's going to...
I beg your pardon. It'll probably give you a QR code to go and get something for diarrhea.
Exactly. It's going to say, hey, here's a nice salad that you might enjoy. So...
Mary Lou is talking about the code. Says the barcode, of course, also works for invoicing, not just the inventory. You see, this is a great thing, and this is I've always had this argument about with supermarkets that all the inventory is read by barcodes. Now, so when they bring stuff into their inventory, it goes in. When you go and check out, it registers the purchase. And I assume, because it's intelligent, or supposedly, it will then remove that item from the inventory. Why is it supermarkets always manage to run out? Because surely, you see, I always said, why don't they just have a simple thing? When you have certain, when you have your inventory, and then when an inventory is being drawn down, and it's taken off, that the computer can automatically ascertain which items are selling quicker, and it can give you the date in which case where you need to reorder in order that you don't run out. But absolutely not. You go to the supermarket, you buy one thing, and you probably never see it again.
Yeah, I have that a lot with PriceSmart, unfortunately. There's something called a point of reorder, and it's not new. It's something that's been known for the last 50 years, and it used to be calculated manually. And computers are really good at calculating that now. Unfortunately, the human component sometimes doesn't cooperate. It's like, for example, oh yeah, we need to reorder, but we still haven't paid our bill from the last order that we made, so we can't reorder. Or because we like to pay, 90 days after the fact, even though the money's still sitting in our bank. There's a lot of internal policies that are 50 years old that are still unfortunately being used in certain places. I mean, a lot of places where you go and buy stuff and they give you a little piece of paper and then you have to go somewhere else so they can give you the stuff that you just picked out of.
Don't start me on that. What especially technology stores. You go into a technology store, or there was one in particular which isn't open at the moment. It seems to have disappeared. But I would get so frustrated when you would go in there and there would be 20 people on the floor trying to sell you something. Then when you go to pay for it, there's 2 people to take the money. So you end up in a queue. And then when you've got that, then you have to go somewhere else to pick it up, or you're told to take it over to there because before you can take it out, they want to check the light bulb works. It is so frustrating that you just can't pick things up and take them and say and buy it. But if I operated a store, I would want 10 people on the checkout and 5 people selling, not the other way around, because that's where I make my money. But I've walked out of supermarkets before now because there's nobody there. And I just leave the stuff on the side and I go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, those 10 people you have in sales, you would rather have 2 or 3 people running the floor and the other ones doing inside sales, marketing, advertising, social media, and so on. I mean, you could spend your money a lot better and you wouldn't even have to have them there in the office. They could just do their job from wherever. So
just finishing up with that topic, why do I use Amazon? I use Amazon for some very minor thing because I just do not have the time to go around town, sit in traffic, to try and find somebody that has got the product.
And even then you do. And even then you do try from time to time. Yeah, I mean, you give them a chance. I walked into the last shoe store I went to and I said, I need shoes in this size. Do you have any? No. Okay. So I went on Amazon and bought 4 pairs. And I've been buying my shoes on Amazon for the last 10 years or so, because every time I walk into a store, I say, I want shoes in this size. And they say, we don't have any. I mean, in Panama, if you're like a 34-inch waist, you can pretty much buy clothes everywhere. You can buy shoes everywhere. But if you're a little bit off that, it's really difficult. If you're skinny, if you're over, a certain amount of weight or whatever, then no, you just can't. So that's why when I have the chance to get somewhere like a thrift store or wherever, they sometimes have these things in unusual sizes. It's like, oh, it fits. Give me 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if they look the same, I don't mind looking the same as long as I'm clothed.
Yes, and trust me,
otherwise I get in trouble with authorities.
No, let me just finish on that, because the thought of you wandering around unclothed is not thinkable.
I do not think of myself as an emperor, so no. I promise the authorities not to do that anymore.
And on that note, we have to say goodbye because we've come to the top of the hour. Dr. Computer Alex, it's been an interesting topic this morning.
Yes, and me walking around unclothed, plus QRs.
Plus QRs, and I'm going to see if I can find an inventory control for my kitchen goods. All right, Alex, as always, thank you so very much. Been very interesting, and all being well, we'll be back with you next week. Next Thursday should be my first day out of quarantine, so with a bit of luck, we might be able to have you here in the studio. So we'll see how it goes.
That would be lovely.
All right, Dr. Computer Alex Newman, thanks very much as always, Alex, for being with us.